The death rate from flu in the 2009-2010 year was lower than any time in the last 10 years. The only thing uniquely different was no one had a flu vaccine that year, or at least 75 or 80% of the country didn't. How incredible is that? So obviously the message is getting out, and that's what's exciting. So I still have great faith in this country, you know. And my dad always said, my dad was from Russia. He escaped Hitler by going to China, and I was actually born today, 66 years ago, in China.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. He met my mom there, and he always used to say, the greatest thing about America is, no matter how bad things are, I pray that it continues like that, we eventually get rid of some politicians, other ones come in, they're all the same, but the bottom line is that we can live here. And boy, I don't know what my dad would say today, because it's getting more frightening and more frightening.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Before, we always had corrupt politicians. We always had, bad politicians. It was a mix. But now with this whole homeland system and this corporate bureaucracy,
it's evil.
Yeah, where they actually run everything, and then the politicians are just window dressing. It's creepy.
It's very creepy. I mean, it used to be this expression is what you can explain to incompetence, you don't explain by malice. But unfortunately, you know, malice is the bigger word. And I wonder what the president meant, although I don't think he means too much. I mean, this is not a very smart man. You know, I wish they would stop saying how smart he is, because, you know, he does have an agenda, you know. But here's the statement. I will not back down from protecting our kids from mercury pollution. Is he talking about the light bulbs that he just mandated, that if they break, he's going to go in the house and grab the kids before the mercury escapes from those twisty light bulbs? I don't know. Just, you know, very frightening.
Yeah, it says you got to call a top-level hazmat team if one of those little things breaks. Or is he talking about the vaccines they're injecting everybody with? What did you think 10 years ago of the hoax, where parents would call, and I saw it on the news saying, it's a hoax, conspiracy theorists say there's mercury. There's never been mercury. Or they had another lie, we've taken it out. Or mercury's not bad for you. Have you seen that newscast where they actually say mercury's good for children's brains?
Absolutely. And let me tell you what's so frightening. In 2009, I, with 10 other people from an organization called Mercury Free, I can't remember the exact name. We went to Atlanta and we put on hazmat suits. You know, you should have been there. You would have loved it. And we were going to take a pretend vial of the H1N1 flu vaccine and throw it on the street, and then have our hazmat team sweep it up. We were told we'd be arrested and put in jail because the vaccine, once it's spilled, becomes a federal offense. You know, I'm sitting there saying, you got to be kidding. They said it was safe. I mean, and so we weren't able to do it, but we still had our hazmat team there. How frightening! How absolutely frightening is this? And let me tell you something about mercury. We have an epidemic of obesity in this country. There's no question about it. And I unfortunately was a good part of that, and I think we have some of the solutions. But the question is, what caused it? You know, look at everyone has gotten heavier, especially our children are so much heavier. One of the causes may be mercury. Even in the smallest amount, mercury disrupts your system and doesn't allow you and cause you to gain weight. And we're talking about one of the smallest effects. If you take one drop of mercury and throw it into a 10,000-gallon pool, the whole pool is contaminated. One drop.
Well, I mean, as you know, Doc, this is one of the metals, heavy metals, they've actually studied for hundreds and hundreds of years because of all the industrial disasters in England. The term mad as a hatter, because it was involved in the clothiers and in the stains, that it made people go crazy. It's connected to schizophrenia, but they never want to say that because they just want to, basically try to treat it with drugs instead of a heavy metal toxicity. And of course, some of it's genetic as well. But the point is there's different types. They know all of this, and I've seen the University of Calgary electron microscope stuff where they put other heavy metals close to mammal brains, and they only cause some electrochemical damage, but mercury in the brain causes a chain reaction and just keeps eating through the brain.
Frightening. And let me tell you, well, I want to expand for 1 minute. If someone shouldn't believe it's only mercury, because some of the vaccines don't have mercury. Many of the vaccines have ethylene glycol, antifreeze, phenol, a known carcinogenic, formaldehyde, aluminum, neomycin, streptomycin, fetal parts. You know, it's don't get too hung up on mercury, because they'll say, oh, we'll take it out. And you still have all the other toxins. And even more, aluminum may be as toxic as mercury. And if you take the mercury out, in order to keep the vaccine stable, they have to put aluminum in. Just absolutely frightening.
Well, that's like Dr. Blaylock says. It's an incredible adjuvant and supercharges everything and intensifies it. That's what he says his research shows it does. And
then Dr. Blaylock, if anyone doesn't know, is a neurosurgeon, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life, you know, as far as that goes. I'm going to be talking about this, Alex, Sunday night. It's a complimentary webinar. You can go on our website, homefirst.com, hit webinar and to sign up for it. It'll be archived. I'll show about 200 slides on this. And also, I will answer questions about how to legally avoid vaccines to the best of our ability. The best way is to listen to Alex. Because
no. This is invaluable, saving lives here, Dr. Eisenstein. And, you know, I'd like to welcome you back in a month or so, because it's been too long, and perhaps we could do a shorter webinar, and I could actually sit here and shut up some and have you go over some of those slides and points here on the radio with us as well.
I'd be absolutely honored to. It'd be my pleasure, my honor.
Well, folks need to go to homefirst.com and find out about that webinar, the books, all the material. You've done an incredible job. And again, we're starting to turn the tide. People are waking up. In fact, I've seen studies, Doc, can you speak to this briefly, where they were bemoaning in Northern California that in the per capita highest educated county in the state, they have the lowest vaccination level. Something only like 35% were vaccinating their children. And that all over the country, the more highly educated, the more people aren't vaccinating. Now, what does that tell the establishment? That the facts are there, the worm is turned, and now they're going to try to force us to take vaccines when their own vaccines, as you pointed out, are causing the whooping cough epidemic. And people like Dr. Dean Adele, I've heard him say, arrest people that don't vaccinate. They're endangering the rest of us. Well, wait a minute. If you've had the shot, Dean, and you take every new dangerous experimental shot that comes out, you should be protected then. Why can't I make them?
Right, exactly. Why are you worried? But you know why it's only in the so-called, quote, rich? You know, it's because the poor people aren't allowed to get their food stamps, aren't allowed to have their Medicaid benefits unless they vaccinate. They tie the two together. And so I've talked to many, many poor people. They say, God, if we could avoid it, we would avoid it also.
Yeah, so it's like a firing squad. I mean, that is eugenics. Get them under your control and then medicalize them with this. And, you know, when this all completely comes out, and it is coming out, but, I mean, look at Rick Perry destroyed by the Gardasil situation. I told him at the time it was going to destroy him.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Rick Perry just didn't understand the issue, or he was too tied in with Merck. I'm not sure which one, you know.
Well, he bought off. I mean, they bought off almost the entire legislature. But I mean, my point to you is, and I want your take on this in closing, Dr. Eisenstein, imagine as all of this, more and more of this comes out, all the people that have fought for vaccines, all the doctors that have endorsed it and written articles in the newspapers, and the criminals that knew at the top what this was really doing, they need to be brought to justice, because this is very similar to the medical tyranny we saw in Nazi Germany. And it's not enough to just defeat these people. When it all comes out, I want to see them go to prison.
I absolutely agree with you, because, you know, there's no excuse. The legal principle is knew or should have known. That's the standard a doctor is held to when it comes to malpractice. And criminal, the same thing. Knew or should have known. You know, it's embarrassing that the smartest people in our society, doctors, well, and I'm not patting myself on the back as much. We are the most read, you know. Do not spend the time to sit and study and do the research. There's so much evidence there. You know, just look at some of the graphs. I mean, what else? Explain that, you know, unbelievable. I agree with you. They have to come to justice.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's get you on in the next month or so to do a full hour or more with the slides and a big presentation similar to what you're going to do coming up this weekend. God bless you, Doc. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you. My pleasure. Be well.
All right. Be well yourself. A great guy, and we hopefully will save some lives again with this today. In closing, since I brought it up, here is the video clip from CBS News locally in Austin, but they aired similar stuff all over the country, saying mercury is good for your child's brain. Here it is.
Device wins over-the-counter approval by the FDA.
And sick of your glasses and contact lenses? A new corrective eye surgery is approved today. Here's tonight's medical headlines with Medical Watch reporter Seema Mather.
Mercury-containing vaccines may help, not harm kids, according to 2 new studies in the journal Pediatrics. There have been widespread concerns that mercury-based preservatives in vaccines might impair the neurological development of children. These new studies suggest that the opposite, that the preservatives may actually be associated with improved behavior and mental performance.
Okay, and that was a CBS video package produced in New York, and then they just read off a teleprompter locally because they found you'll trust local faces more than national, but they're only speaking and regurgitating the demonic evil. And I have clips, we don't have time, but you can type it into YouTube. CNBC says lead good for children. And they actually say lead is good for children, don't worry about the Chinese toys. Melamine was killing kids. They said, don't worry, it's good for them. Your kid dies, so what? Or they got to hook them up on dialysis, more cash for them. Again, instead of denying things now, they just throw it in your face with pure evil. I mean, it is mind-blowing. I want to bring Ted Anderson up here briefly on the economy because he was raising this point. Ted, I know you've got some of the articles. 2 weeks ago, I saw the Wall Street Journal and Washington Post report, there will be new easing. But it'll be other monetary easing. And now he's announcing Bernanke, the Federal Reserve dictator, until 2014, another 2 years at least, or I guess 3 years, if it's all of 2014, that there'll be no interest rates increase, which, again, gives the bankers free money, but not the general public, who they loan shark. That's causing gold to go up, the dollar to go down. So they've tried to hammer gold down ahead of this, but we were correct. QE3 is back, and most economists are saying this will double the rate of inflation in 2012, Ted.
Yeah, well, I mean, Forbes was reporting it all the way back on November 22nd, but now we have the Wall Street Journal coming out with it. There's a lot of publications that are talking about QE3. I don't think the Fed is going to call it QE3 because they took such heat from quantitative easing number 2. But they're doing it right now. If the Fed came in, they stepped in, they said they're going to keep interest rates low until the year 2014. Ben Bernanke is talking about having greater transparency to what he's doing. I can tell you right now, anytime you see the United States Congress voting on an increase on the debt ceiling, you should be owning more gold and silver because you can expect the fact that there's going to be an increase in gold and silver prices, which will reflect the falling of the dollar. But yeah, right now we're talking about QE3. Wall Street calls it that. The Wall Street Journal calls it QE3. But Ben Bernanke is not willing to say those words. I'm sure he's doing that just because of the fact that he's trying to keep it. He's trying to get the nation to take a little different look at that. So.
Well, Ted, now is the time for people to get involved in gold and silver. I mean, every time gold and silver goes down, they manipulate it down. Every time it only goes back up in the last 12 years. And I think people should get into gold and silver. And I know that you've used the downtime to buy a bunch of gold and silver, but you're not raising the price now that it's run up, I don't know, 50-something bucks the last few days. You're actually selling it at the old lower price. What are some of the specials that Midas Resources has?
Well, one of the specials, I mean, we have a bunch of specials.